Hello. So just before the Rallye de Monte Carlo opens the WRC season this year, I'm going to be building the car which celebrated its 60th anniversary of the 1964 win in 2024, the Morris Mini Cooper S. Massive thanks to the British Motor Museum in Gaydon for giving me such fantastic access to the real car. So as you can see, this kit, moulded in red from Revell, it's based on the standard Austin and Morris Mini, so in order to add a few different sort of accessories that the Rallye version had, like the double fuel tank, you'll need to start by drilling open some holes. Much better to do this before you paint it. There's an extra light on the rear, which goes around here. There's some mould seams around the front wing here, but most of the other ones have been sort of put into the seams of the car itself. The car is painted in tartan red with an Old English white roof, the traditional colours of BMC rally cars. Allegedly, red was chosen as opposed to British racing green to take advantage of Italian race organisers, who would close roads and put up barriers quicker when they thought one of their own cars was coming down the road. I used an anti-static brush to remove dust or hairs before priming the body in white. After it was primed, I then used this airbrush ready tartan red paint. Gave this about 5 coats, starting off very light. This will dry into a kind of matte satin finish, which I'll clear coat over later. The bonnet is in white plastic, so try to colour match that as best you can. There we are. As you can see, light coats. The roof here was painted in the Old English white, but then I masked it off so that I could do the edge in that tartan red, as you can see here. Now the decals are cartograph, they're very nice. As you can see here, I've given it a light gloss coat to help the decal settle down. I'm using this decal setting solution to help this adhere as best as possible. But it's a good idea to use a wet cotton bud to roll it into place to get it to adhere as best as you can. Sadly, the number plate decals are actually slightly smaller than they are on the real car. I also found that the 37 on the side was slightly too wide apart. But generally the digits do match the real car, so that's good. Try to put this just behind the hinges on the front and just below the door handle. These are identical, so it doesn't matter which way they go around. You can see on the real version here, the 3 and the 7 are slightly closer together. Got the GB on the back, like so. And the car now doesn't have the Morris Cooper badge, so I'm leaving that off. Got little Union flags behind the headlights on either side. And then you've got these BMC rosettes. The ones here say BMC, but the real ones actually have safety fast over the écurie wording. Écurie being the French word for stable, which is often used to mean a team. Looking at the real cars really helped me position these correctly. After letting the decals cure for a day, I gave this car 5 coats of Tamiya Gloss Clear, thinned down 50-50. When that had cured for a few days, I then wet sanded it with this 3000 grit sanding sponge. I went really carefully around the decals and also the raised detail of the car. Once I had sanded any orange peel flat, I then used Tamiya polishing compounds to bring the paintwork up to a nicer shine. I didn't want to make it perfect, I wanted to make it more like the real car is. Big thanks to Amy and Mark for helping me to open the bonnet so that we could have a look at that A-Series 4-cylinder engine. The Cooper Car Company had enlarged these to 1071cc, that's about 65.5 cubic inches. The transverse front-mounted engine, along with front-wheel drive, was the brainchild of designer Alec Isagonis. Turning the engine around by 90 degrees allowed to maximise the interior space and went on to influence so many cars in the 20th century and beyond. So as you can see here, we've got a full detailed engine in this kit. Start by gluing these together and then painting them afterwards. These engine blocks were normally a kind of dark olivey type green, as you can see here. Fan on the side is normally yellow. Here you can see how the gearbox was also transverse. I was going to add ignition wires to this kit, but it actually comes with some moulded in the styrene. Painted these black just like they are on the real car at the moment. And then you've got the exhaust manifold on the other side. Carburettors. Now the fan would actually take in air from the left-hand side, just behind the wheel arch here, adding some screws and things like that to the top, as you can see. Here's the firewall. That also needs to be painted tartan red, and there's quite a few sort of little canisters and things like that which add to the detail of this car. Now, one mistake I did make was I painted the underside of the body in black. It should be red, the same as the bodywork. However, by the time I'd realised, I'd already started gluing things together and it was too late. And you won't see those details anyway. Once you're sure the engine and the left-hand side here are secure, then add the right-hand side. And then once they're all in, then it's time to add the firewall. Once the engine is secure and surrounded by the walls of the car, you can then add some of these smaller parts. I'd used some copper paint on this part here to try to colour match it as best as possible. Also, the silver Posca paint pen really came in handy to add little details. You've got these small decals which go on the engine, including this little Morris plate on the top. I found this part here on the side really didn't glue very well, unfortunately. I had to put some super glue on the bottom of that to keep it from moving around. And there is the engine bay finished. There's an extensive range of minis at the British Motor Museum, including this bisected one, which is fantastic to really see just how clever Isagonis' design at space saving was. As you can see, the underside shouldn't be painted black, but never mind. So firstly, you've got the controlling arm for the front steering. One of the modifications was the Mini Cooper S had enlarged disc brakes. Remember, don't glue the front axles so that the steering still works. Shock absorbers, like so. These shock absorbers didn't need to be glued in, they were able to connect to the other parts. Now I've seen this car depicted with white or even silver wheels, but I painted them hull red to replicate the colour that they are currently. I used Vallejo for this, along with a bit of gunmetal for the nuts. Wheels made up of 3 parts. And then I sandwich them together like so. Make sure that they're really glued together well before adding them to the tyres. All 4 tyres are identical on this, so it doesn't matter which way they go around. There we are. Now for the interior, you need to cut open and drill open some holes as well. This is to add the seats and also other accessories like the fire extinguisher and the spanners at the back. You've also got this little foot plate for the driver. That's a kind of black vinyl, so I painted down some satin black onto some tape, cut it to shape, and then stuck it to the driver's footwell. So let's have a look inside to see where legendary Irish driver Paddy Hopkirk, along with co-driver Henry Liddon, would have sat. As you can see, there's padding on the side doors to protect the driver and co-driver's knees. You can see those very small pedals. Co-driver's seat is slightly different, and the modified dashboard here entirely in black. You'll also notice just behind the steering wheel, this is the scrutineer's tag that they would have added to all the cars competing in that year's rally. So next we've got the gear stick, handbrake. Had to superglue the fire extinguisher as there were actually no pins, and sadly these spanners on the back shelf are actually in the wrong position. However, I'd already drilled the holes, so had to make the most of it. I used Revell stone grey for the parcel shelf and also the seat patterns. Now you can see them there in a slightly different position. Seats are made up of 2 parts here. Used Tamiya extra thin glue to secure those together. Main ones, I painted the same red as the exterior with that stone grey pattern down the middle of them. And the co-driver's seat is in satin black. To make it right-hand drive, open these sections here that will allow the pedals to go in above them. A little decal on the fire extinguisher. And I used super glue to attach the seats. Pedals go in then. And for the door cards, they were painted in that Old English white with then masked off and the red surrounds around the outside. So holes need to be drilled, and then I added some silver to do the door latch on either side. A small flap went over the door handle on either side. This was apparently to stop the driver and co-driver accidentally opening the door whilst driving. Here the pockets have a little bit of aluminium chrome tape over the top. Then you need to drill into those to add that satin black padding over the top as well. Glue that into place. And the rear one also has that bit of aluminium tape around the top. There we are. And then there's a small ashtray decal which actually goes on there as well. It's the kind of thing you will never see, but it's nice to know it's there. I painted some more masking tape to build this tool sack which goes over the back seat, as you can see here. And there's the interior more or less finished. Now adding the door cards. Although I realised that the instructions get some of the colours wrong, these flaps that cover the door handle should actually be red, so I went back over those before attaching them. The clips in the top of the door, which are attached to the window, should be black with a small bit of chrome on the outside. Now this is the traditional shape of the mini dashboard with the central dial. However, you've got this piece which goes over the top to replicate the Rallye version. This is all painted black with then some dials and buttons and screws picked out with silver. Got this heater control which goes under here, and then a few of the dials with decals. Another decal for the heater control, and there we are. And you can put that into place. Now don't glue this in yet, because it's easier to add the steering wheel later. And here I am with the real car. Now the steering wheel is next. First painted the surround in wood brown. I then dry brushed on some dark brown. And then to give it the varnished effect, I put some clear orange over the top of that. Now I wanted to improve the look of the steering wheel, so I removed and replaced the centre with this metal part here. I measured it up to make sure it was the right size. And then I super glued that onto the back side, like so. Added the centre circle to that. The Morris decal will go on the top. And then this was glued back onto the centre of the original steering wheel once I'd sanded it down a little bit. I then glued this on here so that it could be attached to the rest of the car. There we are, pretty happy with that. As I said, this is quite difficult doing it this way round. I would remove the dashboard, glue it to the underside of that, and then reattach it to the car. Now I wanted to replicate how the car looks now, so I tried using this grille to make it look more like the current version. However, even when removing the surround, it seemed too small and it just didn't look right. So I chose to use the kit radiator, which has this leather cover. They use this when driving through the snowy Alps to protect the engine. So here I'm just using some satin black to replicate the leather. Rear view mirror here, I'd added some chrome tape for this. Glue that into the centre, as well as doing those sun visors. Now the bonnet hinge will go here, that won't need to be glued. Best off if you glue it directly to the bonnet, and then you can just slot that into place before mounting the bodywork to the chassis. There we are. Just be careful when handling the car, as you don't want to drop the bonnet. The fitment of these parts is fantastic. The interior just fits onto the chassis like so, without the need for any glue. Just giving a test fit of the interior inside the bodywork. Now the next thing that needs to be done is this chrome trim around the wheel arches and the side skirt. I used some plumber's aluminium tape for this. Cut it to more or less the right shape using a craft blade, and then used a cotton bud to push it into place. You could paint this, of course, instead, but I found that it gave a really nice metallic finish doing it like this. Now where it overlapped slightly, I carefully used a craft blade to trim those edges and then remove them. Number plate was done in black. I'll add the decal to that later on. You can see making sure that the bonnet is in the right place before attaching it to the rest of the car. Then you've got these two front and rear lips. These have got these small U-shaped pieces. I did these in aluminium tape as well. Here you can see them on the real version here. Next you've got the little Morris Cooper badge which goes on the front. There's a decal that needs to go on the top of that. Got things like the boot clip and the number plate light, fuel caps and things like that. The reason why the car has got fuel caps on both sides is that it had an enlarged double fuel tank, as you can see inside the boot here. Now attaching that part to the grille. And the number plate light at the back. Now I'd used white PVA glue to attach all of the headlight lenses, and now I was using super glue to attach the chrome headlight surrounds to the right place. Taillights I did with a bit of orange and red Sharpie, which were then glued onto those chrome surrounds. Refer carefully to the numbers when attaching these lights at the front. I found the door handles needed to be sanded down slightly to fit into the slots, but then there's a hole from the inside so you can add glue from there. Now the standard mini indicators have actually been moved offset slightly, so refer carefully to the position of them on the real car and this one before gluing them on. I used a small amount of foam safe super glue for these jobs here. I found attaching the rear lip to the car once it was mounted to the chassis very difficult, whereas the front one went on quite easily. So I removed the bodywork, attached the lip separately, and then carefully put the floor of the car back into place. It's important to be careful when doing this, because there'll be a lot of parts that you'll need to attach afterwards, like the exhaust pipe. This was done in iron and then weathered with some Tamiya weathering powder. You've got this little protective plate which goes at the back here. And then the headlights on the front bumper need to be slotted into place. There's a bit of red and black that goes into place on that as well. And the rear bumper, here using a bit of super glue. As I say, that goes in between the bodywork and the rear lip. I painted the front and rear surrounds of the windscreen with some satin black acrylic. That way, if it did go over the tape, I could just scratch it away. Here you can see these metal strips that were there to kind of de-ice or demist the window. I used very thin strips of aluminium tape added to the inside. Then there's a raised lip on the inside of the window, which I added some PVA glue. This went in really nicely. Just make sure to leave it for a while, as this glue does take a while to set. Same with the side windows. These ones I used some silver paint to do the metallic surrounds. And then you've got this section here, which goes on the inside of the rear window. The Mini's win in '64 was a surprise, given it had much less power than its competitors, such as the V8 powered Ford Falcons. But Hopkirk's driving skill, correct tyre choice and the front wheel drive layout gave it a real advantage over the rear wheel drive cars, especially in the snowy Alps. Here you can see adding the decal to complete that Morris Cooper badge on the front, as well as the small clip holding the bonnet down just to the left of the badge. Make sure you use the correct one here. Now, in order to more accurately replicate the Rallye plates, I'm going to attach the decals to some aluminium tape. Once they were nice and secure, I carefully cut them out, trying not to leave any exposed metal. At some point during the '64 race, the Mini actually lost its plate from the bonnet, and I wonder whether the rear one might still be the original. You can see here it driving without the plate on the bonnet, and you can also see on the rear one here how the 7 looks ever so slightly different. It had the top right corner cut off to get around the boot handle, so that's what I'm doing here as well, just to make it a bit more accurate. There we are, and then using cotton bud just to very carefully push it into place. The skid plate on the underside needs to be black as opposed to silver, like the instructions say. There you can see the real one. And unfortunately the light on the roof is actually slightly in the wrong place, so double check yours before attaching it. Then just adding a tiny amount of glue to fix the roof to the top. Final step is to add those much important windscreen wipers to the front. We used a small amount of foam safe super glue to attach these. And there we are, it's finished. I'm very proud of this. I think that this is a real legend of the 1960s. There you can see the engine under the bonnet. And here it is along with the original 1:1 scale car. Let me know how you think I did down in the comments. I tried to make this as accurate as possible within the limits of the kit itself. Make sure you visit the British Motor Museum to check out their almost 400 vehicles, the largest collection of British historic cars publicly displayed in the world. You can also check out what they have on display using the link to their online collections down below in the description, as well as seeing things like their Adopt a Vehicle programme and their heritage certificates, which you can purchase as well. Again, a massive thanks to the British Motor Museum. Here you'll find not only on display the 64 winner, but also the Mini to win the Monte Carlo Rally in 1965 and 1967. Who knows, maybe we'll see builds of those on the channel in the future as well. Thanks a lot for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe, click all the things, and I'll see you really soon.